Well, shoppers are in a frenzy, taking advantage of Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. An increase in spending on last year's festive season is on the cards. According to Google Trends, Black Friday searches increased by 50% from 2017 to 2018. Joining me now is Russell Zimmerman, Executive Director of the Australian Retailers Association. Oh. Thanks for coming on this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. It's the shopping frenzy it's already thrown me. So, Black Friday, it's a phenomenon that many Australians wouldn't have even heard of just a few years ago, and also Cyber Monday. Talk us through a little bit of the history, because it's typically an American thing, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it very much is an American event, and it came off the back of Thanksgiving. And look, I'm going to say 3 years or even 4 years ago, it hardly been heard of in Australia. Now every consumer is talking about it. I've been out in some shops this morning and people were talking about it now being a weekend event. So it's gone from just being a Black Friday through to a Black Friday / a Cyber Monday weekend, and retailers are taking advantage of it. It was originally an online event, and obviously bricks and mortar retailers are really picking up on it and taking it to the ultimate now.
Yeah, so it typically was the Thanksgiving link and that sort of thing, but I guess Australian retailers, both online and in store, they had to really compete with that, I guess.
Yes, look, you absolutely do, and you've got to remember that retailing now in Australia is worldwide. You can jump online and you can buy from the US, UK. It doesn't matter where you want to, China. It doesn't matter. You can buy from wherever you like. Now, if you don't embrace these events, then obviously the retailers from overseas are. We already know that retailers or consumers are buying from overseas, and we believe that discretionary spend is around the $3.18 billion over a 12-month period. So you don't want to let that money go overseas any more than you can. You want to try and keep it here in Australia and keep the jobs going in Australia.
In terms of the online, I guess the peak spending for the festive season, it did used to really focus on Christmas and Boxing Day, but are we seeing that edging earlier in the year now?
Well, what we're definitely seeing is, we used to look at Christmas and say it sort of started around the 15th of November and built up. But because of things like Singles Day that we had a few weeks ago, and now you've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we're actually bringing customers' purchases forward. We're obviously doing that by discounting, but you've also got to remember that retail's pretty tough at the moment, so retailers have to sort of give something to get the customers in the door. Now, you've only got to walk out and had a look around the streets yesterday and seen some of the amazing bargains that are out there. People were telling me they bought TV sets for half price. So, obviously, if you can bring that spending forward and you can get customers in your door, that's good. It may well play off against Boxing Day later on, and we may see a decline in the Boxing Day sales. Hopefully we won't.
We were speaking before about the imports, the amount that Australians are buying from overseas. What is that figure?
Yeah, so that's $3.18 billion over the 12 months. Now, that's in discretionary spend. Now, that doesn't take into account things that there's no tax on. So the way we work that out is understanding that the government is collecting the 10% GST on that, and what they've collected equals around $3.18 billion in spend in the last 12 months.
Yeah, that's incredible. In terms of Boxing Day, obviously that's a fairly Australian thing that we celebrate. Do you think that it will survive the Boxing Day sales, or do you think that it could be kind of abolished, and in lieu of that we would focus more in Australia on the Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
Oh, I think retailers will hedge their bets both ways. And I say that for good reason, that, Boxing Day is a tradition in Australia. I think it's changing, though, because if you remember sort of 4 or 5 years ago, and you take states like New South Wales, we didn't trade anywhere else but the CBD. We're now trading across the whole of New South Wales and pretty much across the whole of Australia. South Australia's changed its view on it. The Marshall government there has opened up that Boxing Day trading so that retailers can open. That's what it should be, by the way. And so we're seeing Boxing Day become still very important. But I think for people who are trying to buy things for Christmas and want to get in early, there are people who actually go out on Boxing Day to buy for next Christmas. They don't have to any longer. They can use the Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales.
Good for the people who like to be organised before Christmas. Let's also talk, you sent through some graphs. Now, what sort of growth are we expecting this festive season?
Right, so the growth we've forecast is 2.6%. Now, I think you've got to look at that in the relation to the 50-year average of retail spend is around 3.8% over the last 50 years. So over the last 10 or 11 years, I've seen growth at Christmas time be as high as 5 and 6%. This is probably the lowest that I've seen it in the last 11 years since I've been with as Executive Director of the ARA.
Wow. Now, that graph that we've got up, it shows that their increase in the food category is 3.2 and other retailing is 3.7 growth. Is that pretty normal that we expect the growth in those categories?
Well, other retailing includes online, so obviously you'd expect to see that growth there.
Okay.
Food's an interesting one because the cost of food will vary. And right now we know we're in the middle of a drought, so generally speaking, produce and goods are fairly expensive. So we're going to see food being a little bit more expensive this Christmas, and that's why we're seeing 3.2% growth there.
Our second graph that we've got looks at the states and territories. What states are we expecting?
Well, Queensland is actually number one with a 3.6% growth, so they're a little bit higher than the national trend. I think the thing that we've got to remember, though, about Queensland is that a couple of years ago it was level, lying flat and it was really struggling. Now, when you've come off a low base, it's much easier to get growth.
Yes.
When you look at a state like New South Wales, which has had phenomenal growth over probably the last 6 or 7 years, to look at a 2% growth, it's about it's number 6 on the list. That then is much harder to achieve. So looking at it quickly, Queensland's number 1, number 2 is Victoria, and that's not unusual. The shopping capital of Australia, number 3 being the Australian Capital Territory, and so on.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with you this morning, Russell. It's been a very good insight into Black Friday. I can't stop hearing about it. It's all I've heard this week. So
thanks, Charlotte.
Thanks for explaining that.